It's, instead of taking a chance, I just wanted to make sure I called it in. I'd feel terrible if something would have ever...
I'm very glad you did, ma'am. That's exactly what you should do. Okay, well, you lost him, and thank you now, and we really appreciate you calling us.
Okay, can someone follow up with me? Wait,
hold on, ma'am.
Okay.
The final 911 call that could have saved a young mother's life, but instead became the mistake that cost her everything. A call that should have triggered urgency, coordination, and swift response. A call that should have been the turning point. But because of errors, confusion, and voices lost in the system, it became the moment everything slipped away. Northport, Florida, a quiet town where the days feel slow and safe, hid a darkness that would shatter one family forever. Denise Amber Lee, 21, was just like any devoted mother caring for her two young boys, making sure homework was done, laughter filled the room, and every corner of her home was a place of comfort. Friends called her kind-hearted, energetic, and someone who could light up a room without even trying. Her husband worked late that night, trusting that everything at home was as it should be. And for a moment, it was. The air was calm, the kind of evening that feels ordinary, even peaceful. But sometimes, danger doesn't announce itself. It waits in the shadows, creeping closer while you think everything is normal. Denise Amber Lee entered the world on August 6, 1986, in Englewood, Florida, as the daughter of Rick and Sue Goff. Her father spent 25 years in law enforcement, the kind of career that teaches a home to be steady, structured, and anchored in love. Denise grew up in that atmosphere, surrounded by people who cared for her, guided her, and expected nothing from her except kindness and honesty. She moved through life quietly, the kind of young woman whose strength didn't shout but lived in the way she carried herself. After graduating from Lemon Bay High School, she took classes at the local community college, imagining a calm, simple future. Her life shifted when she met Nathan Lee, a gentle, hard-working young man who saw her the way everyone close to her did. Genuine, warm, and deeply loyal. Their connection grew fast, but nothing about it felt rushed. Nathan once bought her a small, heart-shaped ring, inexpensive but filled with meaning. Denise loved it so much she never removed it. It became a symbol of the life they were building, a life that grew even fuller when their two sons arrived. At the time, everything fell apart. The boys were barely 2 years and 6 months old, still in that innocent stage where their world revolved around their mother's voice, her laugh, her touch. Denise devoted herself completely to them. Her days were a whirl of feedings, bath times, naps, and giggling chaos. Yet she handled everything with a soft steadiness that made the home feel safe. Nathan worked as much as he could reading meters, stocking shelves late at night, picking up extra shifts whenever possible so she could remain with the boys. They dreamed of buying a house someday. They saved every dollar. They built plans the way young couples do, slowly, lovingly, with hope. It is this quiet, ordinary, beautiful world that makes the rest of her story so devastating. Denise Amber Lee was not a headline. She was a wife, a mother, a daughter, a friend, the heartbeat of a small family that adored her. And only a few miles away, a man she had never met was losing his grip on his own life. Michael King was 38, a man whose childhood had been fractured by a head injury that, according to experts, left a physical imprint on his brain. His family remembered strange, violent impulses, incidents that hinted at something dark flickering behind an otherwise blank expression. Yet he managed to hold a job, marry, raise a son, and appear stable enough to blend into the background. That veneer began to crumble in 2007. His marriage collapsed, money vanished, his home slid toward foreclosure. Every part of his life, emotional, financial, personal, was slipping through his fingers. And instead of seeking help, he retreated inward, brewing resentment, anger, and a quiet kind of rage. In the weeks before everything collided, he spent long, aimless hours driving through Northport in his old green Camaro. Something inside him was unraveling, and he followed that unraveling without hesitation. Whether he was searching for a target or simply waiting for a moment to break, no one could know. What is certain is this. On one ordinary afternoon, his path crossed the home of a young mother who had done nothing except love her family, raise her children, and live her life. Two lives, one full of light, one drifting into darkness, were about to collide in a way no one could imagine. January 17th, 2008, began like any other soft Florida morning, warm light coming through the windows, a quiet breeze slipping through the screens, the kind of day that makes you believe nothing bad could possibly happen. Denise and Nathan had left the windows open to save a little on the electric bill, one of the many small sacrifices they made while dreaming about buying their first home. Late that morning, around 11, Denise called Nathan. It wasn't a long conversation, nothing emotional or dramatic, just two people in love checking in, sharing a moment before going back to their day. They said, "I love you." They said goodbye. And life moved on the way it always did. But sometime after lunch, the rhythm of the neighborhood shifted. A dark green Camaro began circling the block slowly, deliberately, too many times to be coincidence. People in Northport weren't used to seeing unfamiliar cars looping their street. One neighbor stepped outside and caught the driver's eye. No nod, no smile, no flicker of recognition. Just a blank stare and the hum of the engine as he passed again. Then the car turned into the Lee driveway. The neighbor watched for a moment, unsure what to make of it. Maybe he was visiting. Maybe he made a wrong turn. Nothing seemed alarming enough to call for help. She went back inside, trying to shake off the odd feeling tightening in her stomach. But minutes later, something pulled her back, out the door instinct. Unease. A quiet tug that the world wasn't sitting right. She stepped outside, just in time to see the Camaro leaving the driveway. No sound from the house. No movement. Just that car rolling away. At the time, it barely registered. Only later would she replay that moment in her mind, wishing she had listened to the whisper telling her something wasn't right. When Nathan pulled into the driveway that afternoon, he expected home to greet him the way it always did, with warmth, with noise, with the everyday chaos that comes with two little boys and a young mother, who made even the smallest moments feel full. Normally, he'd open the door and immediately hear Denise's voice drifting through the house, the clatter of toys on the floor, the steady chatter of cartoons, or the boys laughing at something only they understood. But that day, nothing answered him. He called her name, expecting her to answer from the bedroom. Nothing. He moved through the house, kitchen, bathroom, living room, each room echoing back the same unsettling stillness, and then he saw it on the table. Her phone, her purse, her keys. Everything she carried. Everything she never left behind. Seeing them sitting there without her felt like a punch. Denise was consistent, almost ritualistic. She didn't step outside without those things, not even for a minute. His chest tightened. Still clinging to the hope that he was overthinking, he went into the kids' room and stopped. Both boys were there, waiting quietly, unaware that anything was wrong, unaware that their mother should have been right beside them. That was the moment the bottom dropped out of Nathan's world. The moment instinct turned into dread. He didn't want to panic, but there was nothing left to explain this away. He grabbed his phone and called Denise's mother, hoping for any answer that would make sense. Maybe she picked Denise up, maybe they had plans he forgot, maybe something simple. But her mother hadn't heard from her at all. That silence on the other end of the line said everything. Fear settled into Nathan's voice, not dramatic, not frantic, but the quiet, controlled fear of a man who already knew something terrible had happened. He dialed the Northport Police Department next, holding on to what little composure he had left. And while he was making those calls, trying to piece together a life that had suddenly fallen apart, the world around him was only beginning to realize that a young mother was missing. Because by the time Nathan walked into that silent house, Denise was no longer in it. When the news came that a 911 call had been made from Denise's phone, everything shifted. Her father, Rick Goff, didn't hesitate. 25 years as a sergeant in the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office had taught him the gravity of a situation like this. This wasn't just a missing person. This was his daughter. And the clock was ticking. Rick moved immediately, calling in every law enforcement agency he could reach. State, county, municipal, every resource had to be mobilized. By 4 p.m., Detective Chris Morales arrived at the Lee residence. The scene was eerily normal. Nothing appeared out of place. No broken doors. No signs of struggle. Yet, the absence of Denise made it terrifying. It was a house frozen in place. Everything exactly where it should be, except for the person who should have been there. At 4:59 p.m., the first bolo was issued. A green Camaro, a male suspect, Denise Amber Lee, 21 years old, with a description detailed enough to catch anyone's attention. Meanwhile, Michael King, the man whose darkness had set all of this in motion, appeared at his cousin Harold Muxlow's house. There was no rush in his movements, no hint of panic. He calmly asked to borrow a flashlight, a gas can, and a shovel. Claiming his lawnmower was stuck, Muxlow handed over the items, uneasy, but unsure what else to do. And then came the sound that would haunt him forever, a muffled, terrified voice calling out from the green Camaro. "Call the cops." Muxlow froze. As he approached, he witnessed King push down someone's head in the car deliberately, controlled. Then King drove away. The story didn't add up. The lawnmower wasn't stuck. The car disappeared. Shaken, Muxlow called his daughter Sabrina, who immediately called the police. At 6 p.m., another warning entered the system. A woman tied up and in danger. Inside the Camaro, Denise was performing an almost impossible act of bravery. Blindfolded, restrained, terrified, she somehow managed to use King's cell phone to call 911. Her voice, tight and trembling, guided operators as she spoke calmly, cleverly, masking her fear while slipping them the crucial details. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, Jane Kowalski's life intersected with Denise's in the briefest, most chilling way. At a stoplight, she heard screams raw, urgent, unmistakable. Looking to her side, she saw the green Camaro and the man behind the wheel. Calm, cold, unmoved. And somewhere in that car, a woman cried for help. Jane didn't hesitate. She called 911, shaking as she relayed the details.
Hello? What is the address that you're at? Hello, ma'am?
Where are we going?
I gotta go up to the house now.
Around where?
Wow, you need to get 4 streets, 5 streets over from your house.
I couldn't get everywhere.
What's your name, ma'am? Hello? What's your name?
Please, my name is Denise. I'm married to a beautiful husband, and I just want to see my kids again.
Your name's Denise?
I'm sorry.
Thank you, too, because he doesn't know.
Please, God, please protect me.
Are you on I-75?
Where are we? I don't know. Please.
Where are you at? Can you tell if you're on I-75?
I don't know where your phone is. I'm sorry.
The screams, the car, the direction it was heading. But the system failed. Jane's call went to a different dispatch center than Denise's, miles and counties apart. Different operators, different screens, separate databases. The warnings, the screams, the clues, the very chance to save a life, were scattered. Not because anyone ignored them. Not because no one cared. The infrastructure wasn't built for this kind of emergency, where seconds make the difference between life and death. Even in the chaos, Denise refused to be silent. She fought with every ounce of her courage, giving everything she could to survive, to leave breadcrumbs for those searching for her. Her bravery was extraordinary, the last human thread between life and death. By 6:50 p.m., Harold Muxlow walked to a nearby 7-Eleven to use a payphone, making the 5th 911 call connected to the abduction. Later, as evening fell, officers stationed at Polwood Blade waited for the green Camaro, armed with its description, license plate, and photos of King and Denise. At approximately 9 to 10 p.m., the Camaro appeared on the I-75 ramp. Officers intercepted it, weapons drawn, shouting orders for the driver to exit the vehicle. King refused. 5 commands later, a threat to shoot finally forced him to comply. When he stepped out, his clothes were wet, his shoes muddy. There was no one else in the car. Michael King was taken into custody and transported to the sheriff's office for questioning the man at the center of the nightmare, captured, yet holding the last pieces of the puzzle close to his chest. Detective Chris Morales stepped in. He had seen the Lee house earlier, Denise's purse on the counter, her phone untouched, 2 young boys sitting alone in their room, waiting for their mother. He carried that image with him as he faced King. He didn't yell, He didn't accuse. He simply asked, "Michael, where is she?" King didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react, just stared at the table as if he were reading some private script no one else could see. Morales tried again, giving details: Denise's name, her age, the boys alone at home. He explained that officers, volunteers, and her own father were searching desperately. Still nothing. Detectives rotated, trying everything. One appealed to guilt, another pressed with severity, another pushed harder, hoping frustration or fear would crack him. Nothing. A photo of Denise and Nathan on their wedding day slid across the table. King glanced at it for 2 seconds, then looked away, as if it were irrelevant. Morales leaned in again, voice low, pleading. "Her family deserves to know where she is. Help us find her." Hours passed. He said nothing. No location, no explanation, not even a lie. Silence. Outside, search teams combed the streets, the woods, the fields. Denise's father, a 25-year veteran, waited for any scrap of information. Inside, King remained indifferent, staring at a small scratch on the metal table, as if the world outside didn't exist. 2 days later, cadaver dogs found her. Denise's body lay in a shallow grave, fetal position. Water pooled at the bottom. A single gunshot wound to her forehead, the muzzle pressed directly against her skin when it was fired. King offered nothing, no confession, no explanation, no remorse. Just that same vacant stare he had from the moment they pulled him out of the car. By the time Michael King stepped into the courtroom, the air felt heavy, almost like the room itself was holding its breath. Everyone knew the truth. They didn't need to hear it. They had lived it through news reports, through the frantic calls, through the images that refused to leave their minds. But now, the man who had stayed silent for days, who had stared through every question without a flicker of remorse, was finally standing in front of them. King moved in with the same hollow, empty stare he wore the night he was arrested. No fear, no shame. He didn't look at anyone, didn't search for a familiar face. He walked as if detached from the world, a ghost in a living room full of grief. Across the room, Denise's family held themselves together by sheer will. Her father, a 25-year veteran of the sheriff's office, watched with a stillness forged by discipline, but the pain in his eyes was impossible to hide. Nathan sat beside him, shoulders slumped, staring at the man who had ripped his wife from their lives. The prosecution wasted no time. They laid out the story piece by piece, methodically, relentlessly. The heart-shaped ring Nathan had given Denise found in King's car. Denise's DNA on his clothing, inside his home, inside the Camaro. Every detail leaving no room for doubt. Witness after witness testified. Neighbors who saw the green Camaro circling the block. Dispatchers were forced to recount the missteps that haunted the case. Forensic experts, detectives, even those who had encountered King after the abduction. King's defense offered almost nothing. No witnesses. No compelling story. Head trauma. Emotional instability. Stress. But the facts were unshakable. The evidence left no room for doubt. The indictment was clear. First-degree murder. When the jury left to deliberate, it took them just 2.5 hours to return. Everyone stood as the foreman read the verdict. Guilty of kidnapping. Guilty of sexual battery. Guilty of first-degree murder. Nathan bowed his head. Denise's father stared straight ahead. A week later, the sentencing phase concluded. 12-0. Unanimous. Death. The judge's voice carried rare emotion as he called the crime cruel, senseless, and beyond comprehension. Michael King remained unchanged, staring emptily ahead. For Denise's family, for the officers, for everyone who searched, prayed, and hoped, the verdict could not bring her back. But it was justice. The system had finally acknowledged her courage, her fight, her life. Michael King sits on death row at Union Correctional Institution in Ryford, Florida. And the memory of Denise Amber Lee endures a reminder of one woman's fierce will to survive, even in the darkest hour imaginable. In the end, what happened to Denise Amber Lee became larger than the crime itself. Her case forced an entire country to look in the mirror and ask, how many lives depend on a single phone call? Denise did everything a person could possibly do. She fought. She thought clearly. She gave clues. She dialed 911 in the dark, terrified, and still managed to speak with a strength most of us can't imagine. Strangers saw something that didn't feel right, and they also called, hoping they were in time. Today, every dispatcher in America who listens to a strange call, every call taker who hears a cry in the background, every emergency center that upgrades its training and protocols, they carry a piece of her story with them. Denise shouldn't have had to die for the system to improve. But because of her, thousands of lives have been saved by decisions made quicker, calls transferred faster, instincts trusted more boldly. Denise Amber Lee didn't survive that night. But she changed what survival looks like for countless others. And in that way, she never really disappears from this story. She becomes the reason it can't happen again.